Seems to me that you didn't listen me. Good afternoon. Happy Sabbath. Okay. We are happy to be here or not? Yes? Okay, are you happy? Can I see your hand? Okay. At least you are moving a little bit. Thank you, Dr. Julio, for your presentation. Very nice. Now we move to the next presentation. Our speaker is the AIIAS student in PhD on religion, Donny Chrissutiano. He is an ordained pastor for 16 years. He has one son, and he comes from the central Java of Indonesia. In 2012 and 2013, he came to AIIAS to make the MDiv program, and from 2013 up to now, he's taking the PhD in religion. Before coming to AIIAS, he served as Sabbath School, Personal Ministries, Education, and Youth Director. The topic of Donny Chrissutiano is Discipleship in Indonesia, its strengths and challenge between 1900 and 1909. Like other countries which are mostly Muslim, it is difficult to gain new converts or sustain the existing Christians in Indonesia. However, during the first decade of 20th century, the Adventist message found its ground in the country. Interestingly, it landed at one of the most rigid Muslim territories. There were two phases of growing. The first was at Padang and the second was at Surabaya. Initially, the church was hard to develop, but it reached this culmination in 1909, when the addition of the church members was 5 times, and especially in Java, it grew 10 times than the previous year. This remarkable growing was difficult to be attained even until today. Discipleship was one of the main factors why the growing happened. This paper tried to find out what kind of discipleship that the pioneers did and what the strengths and challenges that they faced so that the church can get the benefit from it. Now is our time to listen our friend and student Donny Chrissutiano. He has between 25 minutes up to 30 minutes, and after that 10 minutes of question and answers.
Good afternoon and happy Sabbath. From yesterday, we have learned about discipleship from the perspective of applied theology, systematic theology, and also biblical studies. And today, and this Sabbath, at the last presentation, I will provide the discipleship in the perspective of historical theology and church history. Initially, I provide purely on the church history, but the committee asked me to provide the historical theology understanding of discipleship in the 20th century, especially from 1900 to 1909. Common perspective about discipleship. There is a current understanding that discipleship is a training in a tradition. Even though it might be reasonable, but in Christianity, it should be more than passing an understanding or a doctrine. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said that Christian discipleship means adherence to Christ. And because Christ is the object of that adherence, Christianity without discipleship is always Christianity without Christ. Christianity without discipleship is always Christianity without Christ. I think it is a very important quotation from Dietrich Bonhoeffer. But far before Bonhoeffer wrote his idea on the discipleship, Seventh-day Adventist has come to the same idea before. Yeah, because I will discuss about the first decade in the 21st century. Since Bonhoeffer, he was a radical theologian in Second World War. The concept of discipleship in the beginning of 20th century in the Adventist Church, especially in the Southeast Asia, could be found in the magazine and periodical which published in Australia Union Conference. Why? Since this organization had a responsible to oversee the mission in this territory. Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Singapore, and the other country in Southeast Asia was under oversee of Australia Union Conference at the time. So when I try to provide the understanding of discipleship, I look at the Australian Union Conference periodical and magazines. And when I try to look at that, it is surprisingly because 1/3 of the understanding of the discipleship in 1900 to 1909 mostly written by Mrs. White. Since Mrs. White was there in 1891 to 1900. So she has much attention to this territory. There were 3 leaders in Seventh-day Adventists. Besides that, several other person who wrote in Australian Signs of the Times and Union Conference record during this period about discipleship. The 3 leaders, the first one is Ellen G. White, like I have said, and the second one is A.T. Jones, and the other one is L.R. Conrady. He was a president of Europe Division, and he was also the vice president of General Conference. Now, what is the understanding of discipleship in that period? The foundation of the discipleship is love. Love of Christ and love our neighbors. Mrs. White says in 1909, she plainly wrote, knowledge, benevolence, eloquence, gratitude, and zeal are all aids in the good work, but without the love of Jesus in the heart, the work of the Christian ministers is a failure. So the foundation of discipleship should be love. Love of Christ. I just put in my PowerPoint only a few articles you can read in the full paper. All 9 articles, and 1/3 of them were written by Mrs. White. So the fruit of discipleship, the first one is internal growth. Christ-like character. So it is the same with the presentation this morning, Dr. Dison. Internal growth is the fruit of discipleship. Christ-like character, fruit of the Spirit. It is the fruit of the discipleship. And the second fruit is external growth. It is through service, winning soul. Once again, Mrs. White says, fruit bearing then is the condition of discipleship. What is the fruit that is to be born? Purify of character, unselfish deeds, Christ-like words. Those who do not bear this fruit, those who live do not reveal the tenderness of Christ, are not accepted as representative of God. Mrs. White wrote in 1903. And then, for the Adventists in this period, the first decade of 20th century, Southeast Asia, discipleship is not just resulting on the personal character development, but also it equips to doing his service. A.T. Jones suggested that discipleship means consecration of person and means to doing God's service. Ellen G. White agreed with this concept and pointed out that discipleship and service could be bound together. Therefore, the discipleship is not just related with internal growth, that is character development, but also external performance when the children of God minister others in service. Now we come to the history. The first missionary came to Indonesia was Ralph Waldo Munson. Here's the picture of Ralph Waldo Munson. Yeah. And it is his wife. And he came with the 5 children on December 30, 1899. He came on a Sabbath day. Munson wrote that he sailed from New York to Rotterdam on November 11, 1899. And then he reached Padang on December 30. Padang was one of the strictest Muslim areas in Indonesia until now. It's more than 100 years already, but in Padang, we just still have only one church. Until now. Now, Adventists in Indonesia, more than 200,000 Adventists in Indonesia. And in Padang, only 40, it is the approximately the membership of the church. Only still one church there. After 49 days travel from New York, came to Padang. Together with his family, they attempted to evangelize the people and found that the 2 majority kinds of people were Chinese and Malay. The latter was mostly Islam or Muslim. And this is the house of Munson and his wife, and together with his 5 children. Very simple. Yeah. The beginning and its challenges. The problem to evangelize the Chinese, was that he could not speak Chinese. He could not speak Chinese. And a Chinese descendant that he knew in Singapore several years before and hoped that he could help him in reaching the Chinese at Padang, he also could not speak Chinese. That is why then this man was sent to China for 6 months or a year to learn Hokkien, one of the Chinese language. Then he sailed to China on February 18, 1904. However, there is no account of his back to Padang, while Munson went back to Australia in 1905. And when the young man who went to China on February 18, his name is Tai Hongxiang, or he has another name as a Christian. His name is Timothy Tai. Yeah, Timothy Tai. And then when he came to China, Munson wrote to Australian Union Conference about the result of his work there. Initially, when Timothy Tai went to China, he wanted to learn Hokkien. But when he went there, he met a pastor from Baptist. His name is Pastor Kai. Pastor Kai. And according to Seventh-day Adventist Encyclopedia, Pastor Kai was the the first ordained minister in China. I mean, in the term of native people. I don't know if it's right or not, but it is the data from the Seventh-day Adventist Encyclopedia. Now, this is the excerpt of the editor of Australian Union Conference records about the work of Timothy Tai in China. Yeah. Our reader will remember, I don't know if you can read, but I will read for you. Our readers will remember reading about the young Chinese, Timothy Tai, of whom Brother Munson has written in the connection with the mission in Sumatra. A letter has just come to hand from Brother Munson, from which we quote, "Last February, he, Timothy Tai, sailed for China, where he has been ever since at Amoy, studying the Fukien or Hokkien dialect of Chinese. He soon became attached to one of these ordained preachers. Indeed, he is the head man of their mission, and he has won him over completely to the truth. It was on the 6th of August that he began to keep the Sabbath of the Lord, and it was on the 8th they sailed for Hong Kong. A letter received since their return tells me that Brother Kai, the man that Timothy Tai converted, has severed his connection with the mission and is prepared to follow the Lord wholly." So this is the relation of Indonesia and China in history. First time in 1904 regarding discipleship. So the beginning and its challenge. Even though Munson could speak Malay fluently, so as missionary, even though he was a native America, but Munson, before came to Indonesia, he could speak Malay fluently. Malay is the common language of the local people. However, he could not reach them verbally, since there was a restriction from the Dutch government at the time that the colonial government knew that any attempt to Christianize Muslim areas would probably be provocative and destabilizing political situation and cause of rebellion. Fortunately, on another side, the government permitted spreading literature to them, but another problem occurred, that Munson identified the Malay Muslim mostly could read in Arabic letters, a language that he did not anticipate. And this is the development of the church membership. In 1900, there's no membership. Even though only 2 weeks after Munson came to Indonesia, he met Timothy Tai, and Timothy Tai received the message of Sabbath, and he began to keep the Sabbath. But he did not baptize yet until a years later. In 1901, Sumatra, 1 companion and the membership 10. Because Padang is in Sumatra Island. 1902, 12, 1903, 10 again, 1904, 20, 1905, 10, and 06, there is no companion and only 2 membership. Why? Munson went back to Australia. And for 1/2 year, there was no missionary in Indonesia. So when Wanslick came, 1/2 years later, he just found 2 members there. Wanslick is the successor of Munson. And Wanslick cannot speak Malay. So it's hard for him to make discipleship to these church members. And then in 06, there is another island opened, Java. And there are 6 members. 07, now Java 6, Sumatra 4, and Java 4, and Sumatra 5, and in Java 40. So that's why what happened in 1909, when the membership not just double, but 10 times. So what was the strength and the weaknesses of the discipleship at the time? Discipleship in Sumatra. As Munson came to Indonesia in December 30, after a few weeks, he met his student of his prior missionary post in Singapore. However, even though Tai Hong Xiang, the name of his student, or Timothy Tai, has accepted the truth, he was not immediately baptized in that year, but in the following year, that is in 1901. This Indonesia, and this is Padang. This is Jakarta, Padang. So Munson came from this direction. Yeah. West coast of Sumatra. This is Sumatra Island, and this is Java. The first baptism of Munson. While Tai Hong Xiang was still learning about the truth in 1900, he has been involved in the service for the Lord. He brought Munson to his uncle, and finally, he was baptized together with Tai Hong Xiang as the first baptism of Munson in Indonesia. It was in 1901, so it needs time. It needs time, more than 1 year to convert. Munson's last Bible student at Padang. It did not just happen with his first baptism. His last Bible student in Padang, Emmanuel Seregar. This is the first local people when Munson met and tried to convert him. The man that he met a month before his departure to Australia, he did not immediately baptize him after his acceptance about the Sabbath. Few years later, apparently, he was baptized in 1908. He met Emmanuel Seregar 1905. So it means 3 years. So the strategy of Munson to making discipleship, it is not just when they accept the Sabbath and then, okay, you accept Sabbath and all the doctrine, and then you should be baptized. No, it needs time and let the disciples grow and more understand about Jesus. This is, I think, for Indonesia, it is important. This is the first 6 persons local persons, who accept Sabbath. There is no in other book about history of Adventists in Indonesia put this picture. I just take it out from the Review and Herald in 1908. And who is Emmanuel Seregar? Pastor Leroy, can you identify? Even Review and Herald made a wrong notion about this. Because in the 30 April 1908, Review and Herald identify this one as Emmanuel Seregar. And a week later, they revise. It is wrong. Emmanuel Seregar is here. This person. Yeah. The first baptism of the sometimes discipleship needs a long time. The first baptism of the local people happened after a series of studying the Bible through the effort of Emmanuel in a year. So even though Emmanuel Seregar was not baptized yet, but he already involved in the discipleship of others. Yeah. He has given them lessons since 1907, even though he was not baptized yet. And then they have kept the Sabbath. Nevertheless, Emmanuel did not satisfy with that. He wrote a letter to Munson, and he was connected to E.H. Gates later on as the president of Union Conference, Australian Union Conference, the one who in charge in the mission headquarters at Singapore, who bring them to study the Bible there. In 1908, they were baptized, the 3 persons, the 2 persons. Ezekiel and Gaius, it is the Christian names. Yeah. Because before, they were Protestant. Yeah. So that's why the name is Christian name. A teacher in Singapore Adventist school testified about the baptism of this Indonesian, that we have every reason to believe that all these individuals are sincere in the step which they have taken. And it did our hearts good to see them go forward in this ordinance. Ezekiel, one of the first Batak's baptism in 1808, wrote his testimony about his experience once he returned to his homeland to continue the work that has been laid by Emmanuel Siregar. He articulated that many of his relatives and friends offered him tobacco, but he refused it, since it is not good for health, he said. He wants also to share the truth and needs some more books to be given, since the ones that he has are not enough. He said, they want to look to and to read and keep that book. This is the original language of Ezekiel. You know, for Indonesia, English is a big problem, especially 100 years ago. For now, we are struggling with English. You know, in English Center, most of Indonesia need to attend that first before we attend the seminary. Moreover, Ezekiel, more than 100 years ago, he was there only for 6 months. And then I want to show you the letter, the first native Indonesia, where his letter was published in Review and Herald. This is the letter from Ezekiel of Batak land. This is the note of the editor, and this is only some words that I take out from the Review and Herald. I read for you. The following letter was received at the Singapore Mission in response to a parcel of Malay tract sent to Brother Ezekiel, one of our Batak brethren, who has returned to his native country. We print the letter without correcting either composition or spelling. So, you know, there are many to be lost in this in this letter. Readers of the record will remember that Brother Ezekiel spent only a few short months in our Singapore mission school. So that's why editor understand why Ezekiel was not right in putting the words and also the grammar there. For me, I can understand, even though in the wrong grammar. I don't know you, because I know what was in his mind, even though in wrong grammar, because we have the same understanding. Last night, for example, the first word was wrong in grammar. Last night, I was received all the books. It should be, last night I received, but I was received all the books how you send me. I'm very glad, should be, I'm very glad. Now, and I give you thanks very much, but even though he was a limitation, even though he did not know much about English, but from this history, I get something. He has a sincere heart to evangelize others. And now, because of this is the first step of native people who wants to share the good news in Indonesia. Now, more than 40% of Adventists in Indonesia are Bataks. It was started with Ezekiel and Emmanuel Siregar. So now we have more than 1,000 schools. We have 3 universities, and we have 4 hospitals. It is because of this brave man. He went to Singapore, and then only in 6 months, he was back and evangelized his native people. discipleship in Java. Now, discipleship in Java actually was more difficult than in Sumatra. There were no outstanding local person like Tai Hong Xiang and Emmanuel Siregar in Java. There's so quiet person. Javanese is quiet person. However, the work was working well since the coming of more missionary. It made missionaries could guide the members personally. It can be seen by the work of Petra Thunheim and Anna Nordstrom, two women workers at Surabaya. You can see these two women, not men. And in 1913, Petra Thunheim was recorded in Adventist Yearbook as the first mission president in Indonesia. So the first mission president in Indonesia was a woman. Thunheim taught several families. One of them has received the truth. Nordstrom, another woman, said, "We have had prayer with them a few times and had the privilege of seeing them kneel for the first time in their life before the throne of God, of grace. In this meeting, there were 6 other persons who had received the truth. They were as the result of the personal contact of those who had accepted the message, as the result of their discipleship." Thunheim reported that a young Chinese man is willing to study more about the truth in Adventist school at Singapore, where he may become an efficient worker in this great cause, while the other Chinese young widow has given up her tea, coffee, tobacco, meat, and some other things, and is trying to live as we do. So if you notice, it is hard to get a local or native people. Chinese, and also the other record is about Dutch and the other. While it was hard to get local people to be a disciple of Christ, there was an invitation to come to Central Java in 1908. Miss Jans, this is from German. He was a Methodist. The one who invited Adventist missionary to her small community wanted to know more about the Advent message at her place. There were 25 to 30 persons who have been keeping the Sabbath. Thunheim was there for 4 months. So Thunheim, the first woman missionary of Indonesia, she came to this place, and then for 4 months, she taught her and her colony, Miss Jan's colonies, for 4 months. Initially, the church was hesitating to take over the work of Miss Jan's place, since she was not in harmony with some of our points of doctrine. It was thought best not to take it over. However, a decision was made in the workers' meeting in October 1908 to send Thunheim at the colony of Jans, and then after several months, she said to Thunheim after dinner, "You are in charge now in my colony. I have told the people that this is the last day I have charge." This sad meeting is as the result of the fervent discipleship of Thunheim to Jans for 4 months. And then it needs 2 years to teach her and his colony. So in Indonesia, it was not in the short time discipleship to make the disciples of Christ there strong. Conclusion. Even though Indonesia is known as the biggest Muslim country in the world, the first Adventist message came in Sumatra and Java during the first decade of 20th century and was able to be established in 2 of strictest Muslim cities, Padang and Surabaya. Since there were many prohibitions to evangelize the majority, it was hard for missionaries to make a discipleship and won a new convert. There were few challenges that they faced while doing the discipleship. First of all, most of all new believers depended on missionaries so much in their discipleship. So that's why when you see in 1906, there were only 2 persons when Munson left, because so much depend on the missionary. But if they depend on Christ, I think has a different result. Yeah. Their growing was so slow, and if the missionary departed, the discipleship process in the church almost stopped. The other challenge that the church faced in discipleship was culture and language. Since the missionaries came from abroad, unless Munson, all missionaries had much time to learn the local language and culture. So that's why they need 2 years, 3 years to learn the local language. It made the process of discipleship did not go efficiently, especially when they taught the message. The other challenge in doing discipleship was the social circumstances. Oftentimes, family, relative, friends, and government regulations prohibited the missionaries from abroad to evangelize the local people. They just could share printed material, but mostly local people only could read Arabic letters since they were Muslim. And then now the slang. In spite of facing many difficulties, the missionaries found their way to win some people to Christ, especially in 1909. The overall membership in Indonesia increased 500%, and especially in Java was more than 10 times compared with the previous year. Discipleship was one of the crucial factors of this successfulness. The first factor was the support of organization in delivering missionary, even though, this is important, especially for my context. Yeah. Even though, for several years, both mission fields, Padang and Surabaya, in Java Island, did not show any promising number of baptism. Even though the number of baptism tend to decline, because from 1904, 1908, 6, 0, 7, 6, and 08, 4, but the Union Conference sent 10 laborers. So many times in Indonesia, if there is no baptism there, only 1-2 years, so the missionary should be moved in another place. But since the union, because it's under directly of the Australian Union, sent 10 laborers, not just in 1909 when the membership was double, but since 09, there were many places in Indonesia was open, especially in Batavia. It's another part of, now it's Jakarta. Jakarta. It's the same island with Surabaya, Java, but Surabaya is in East Java and Batavia is west part of Java. And the first church was organized in Indonesia was in Java. Even though in several years there was no many baptism, but the conference still support the missions there. Because they know the discipleship, just because of the character of the people, depend on the missionary. Especially even though since the first missionary came in 1906, the membership around 4 to 6. And you know, the first conference in Indonesia, especially in West Indonesian Union Mission, was in Surabaya. One of the hardest city where the Muslim until now is so strong there. Second aspect of discipleship strength in Indonesia was patience in waiting the growing of faith of the Bible students. The missionary did not push them to be baptized only because of their acceptance of Sabbath. Cases of Tai Hongxiang, Emmanuel Seregar, Ezekiel, and John Scoloni, so that the missionaries could wait until they were ready to be baptized. It means the teaching of the Bible and Christian lifestyle were the matters that they should accept when they decided to be baptized. But the third factor is important, for it showed the eagerness and the perpetual effort of the missionary in doing discipleship, to studying the Bible and training them how to be a witness for others. They were not idle or passive in doing the discipleship, and neither just waiting the readiness of the Bible student to be baptized. So when they try to teach them about Christ, when the missionaries are waiting for the fruit, they were not idle. They keep trying, and not give up with the condition and the hardship in Indonesia. So this is the strength and challenge in Indonesia during the first decade of 20th century. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Donny. Thank you for bringing us the story of Emmanuel and Ezekiel, who has the same English than me. If there is any question, we have short time, so if we will allow only one question. The first hand, please, there. There is a hand of a lady. Please raise your hand again, please. Thank you.
No, not about the grammar. Indonesia is a Muslim country. Indonesia is a Muslim country, and the first president is a woman. You mentioned in your presentation, right?
Yeah.
So did the men have difficulties joining the church because of the leadership?
No, because Munson left before the organization was established. I mentioned it is outside the presentation just because it is in 1913. In 1912, Munson went back to Australia when the church growing there. There was no missionary because most of them were sick because of malaria and many things. And then the strongest missionary in 1930 was Petra Tunheim. So the church chose her as the president of the mission in Indonesia. But when I called mission, the term is not exactly the same with the term mission that we use now. So I know some, but when you ask, she was ordained? I don't think so. I know the question will go there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Donny. A big applause to him, and there is something for him.
Yeah. On behalf of AIIAS, Asian Theological Society, I would like to present this certificate of appreciation to Pastor Donny for his presentation on the discipleship in Indonesia, its strengths and challenges in 1900 to 1909. Thank you so much, and also we have this token as the appreciation. Thank you so much.